Alright, hey guys, it's Aiden, and it's been a while since I last did an update video. So I've compiled a bit of a list to get things together and kind of give you a jump start on all of the new things since my last video, and just to let you guys know how I'm doing. So, to start with is tea changes. So basically, my doctor and I had decided that it was going to be best that um, my dose be lower than what I had been on for the majority of my transition. I'm on 50 milligrams instead of 100 milligrams. This is mainly because I was experiencing symptoms and side effects from the T levels in the blood. Because my blood had thickened over the time that I've been on testosterone. But my body is back to a normal cycle. I'm no longer experiencing all of the symptoms that I was, and my blood levels have definitely improved. They've also improved just because I've taken better care of myself by drinking plenty of water and having my blood drawn periodically if my blood count is too high. But to explain a little more in depth so that way you guys understand a little bit better what this all means and how it affects me is an individual's blood count can become too high when they take testosterone. It can happen to anyone, really. This happens when an individual takes testosterone because it affects the bone marrow. It effectively pushes out and/or basically produces more red blood cell platelets, causing just an increase in your blood count. This is really common, and it's most of the time found when a individual is experiencing puberty, and since this is a hormone that is the cause of the secondary sex characteristics, and primarily what happens when you hit puberty is that your testosterone levels increase if you are a male. Normally you would see these issues of the bone marrow producing red blood cells around that time. So it can happen to anyone, but it primarily happens when testosterone is taken in high amounts and can't be processed very well or quickly enough. So the next stage of this list is body changes. So currently I have compiled a bit of a list for this as well. First, in the past few months, I have noticed that I have gained a lot of muscle. This is primarily due because I have toned up in many areas in my body, such as I've lost a lot of fat in my hips, my thighs, my love handles, and I've toned up my back, arms, stomach, calves, and chest. It's generally not, it's not all stayed the same because I eat different things and I don't continue to exercise necessarily regularly because I need to sleep in between work schedules and stuff. That's difficult. So I don't sometimes eat the best of foods or stay relatively on a good diet sometimes. So the fat continues to shift and move and change on my body still. I have been working out though, which I think I made mention in my last video, and due to that and just having a very physically demanding job, I have basically created all of these changes that are visible and continue to create these changes based on working out in my job mainly. And last that I have really noticed is body and facial hair continues to grow and fill in. I still don't really have much in the way of chest hair or stomach hair, but I really personally find that fine, and I'm kind of indifferent about it nowadays. I mean, it's just chest hair and belly hair. Um, and as you can tell, too, like, I have a relatively good beard now, too. Um, so it's always been pretty difficult for me to grow a mustache, and I really don't. It kind of looks funny, and I've thought about shaving it off, but so fourth on the list to make mention about is mental and emotional changes on testosterone. This list was extremely hard for me to narrow down to exact changes that I could definitely influence from testosterone. Part of that is because it's really, really difficult to tell whether or not you know, on one side of it, you have the possibility that these changes have occurred from taking testosterone as a hormone supplement. Then, on the other hand, you have the possibility that these changes have occurred because you grow as a person and you change and you learn how to handle things differently. And I've been in therapy pretty aggressively since December of last year, so it is also possible that these changes have occurred because I've been in therapy. So these are the real ones that I have definitely at least narrowed down to being affected by testosterone. So the first one is I have a lot more patience. I have patience in a way whereas before I would get flustered easily and irritable and just kind of like, I don't know, catty and bitchy, I guess. I always kind of just like threw in the towel, waved the white flag, just gave up on things. Most of the time I would, start working on a project and then, I would give up like halfway because I just got frustrated and I couldn't maintain focus, and if it ever was too difficult, I just didn't want to. But now I tend to have a lot more patience and focus. I tend to want to fix things. I want to put in the time spent on something, and I will do whatever it takes to complete a task. And I have the focus and patience that I need to do it the entire time. And I very rarely give up. If anything, I've actually swung the opposite direction and have become very stubborn and don't allow myself to give up on a task until I'm mentally exhausted. um, the second point that I can make definitively that I know is from testosterone is the lack or difficulty in being able to express sadness by crying, or being able to express sadness. Which this has been a steady difficulty that has been happening since the very beginning on hormones. It has gotten easier with time, and I'm definitely much more capable than I ever have been this entire time, but nonetheless, it is still very difficult. It definitely takes a very powerful, sad event or emotional issue that comes up to bring me to be able to cry. And sometimes I have to force myself to think about really sad, horrible, awful things to cry so that I can get that emotional sadness out and have that as an outlet still. And the last thing that I want to mention is that my point of view has changed. I see things more as, everything is on a spectrum. And we have, 2 points on a spectrum that are the very opposite ends. I'm more in the middle nowadays, where as before I would see things one way or another and could never grasp a middle ground on anything because I was always overcome by emotional things. Like, I was very overwhelmed emotionally as a teenager. And part of that had to do because, like, as an explanation for the overwhelmed feelings that I had, was because I was dealing with myself and the lack of understanding and the lack of change that I needed in my life. So when I would deal with concepts that could swing from one end, very opinionated aspects or very one point of view or the other, I never could see a middle ground, and I would always swing one side or the other. Where now I look at things as very middle ground instead of black and white. To give you an example would be the way that food could be cooked. I would easily get upset over someone else's opinion of how my cooking was. And then I would create an opinion based on an emotional concept attached to something that they said or did. And it had a lot to do with how I felt secure about myself in transition. Like, things that would be opinionated and hard for me was attached to things that transition affected. And body image and self-esteem quickly rose after starting transition. I changed very fast and made a lot of changes very fast, but it's exactly where I needed to be and exactly what I needed to feel and go through at that time. And it was appropriate to make those changes that quickly. As for the rest of this video, I stopped making a list because those are the main things that I can really give you an update on as far as current transitional related things. They're similar to all my other videos. Again, I guess I can give you also a very quick update on my life as far as transition goes. I still have not gotten top surgery, nor have I been able to get bottom surgery. I also have not had a hysterectomy, or I have not had any surgeries. I have just been on hormones. This is partially because of a lot of different factors. The main factor is money and insurance. Neither are really an opportunity for me right now. I don't have extra cash or savings or any of that to be able to give a run at trying to get surgery covered. A lot of times I wind up with a lot of medical bills anyways, and right now insurance is not covering the coverage that I do have does not cover a lot of the stuff related to transition. I think the only thing that my insurance does cover is only a 30-day supply of my testosterone. I can't get a longer supply other than 30 days. If it's longer than 30 days, so the reusable vials, then they won't cover it. And I don't know if it covers my syringes and needles. I believe it does. But still, it winds up being about $100 or so a month, even if it does cover everything. And right now, I'm not really looking to try to have surgery. I really don't have the availability in my work to take off work. I can't I don't have savings or anything to live off of, so surgery is just in the very future. Right now, it's not a necessity necessarily for me. Um, I would like it eventually, I guess, is the best answer. Um, as far as anything else, transition wise, I'm just taking it one day at a time. Everything is going well. There hasn't been any major issues. I did have a lot of different issues with jobs and stuff for a while, but I've had the same job now for almost a year. It'll be a year in May. And otherwise, I mean, transition stuff, it's all been good. There hasn't been anything new or bad in a while. So I will cut this video off because it is getting rather long and I don't want to keep you. So I will make another video after this one about just my life. Things that have nothing necessarily to do with transition. Because again, I haven't been on YouTube in a long time. So, alright. See you guys.